Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are live right now on CannaBuzz, and if you're watching us on YouTube, it's okay. Just give us a subscribe and like, and stay tuned. We've got a great episode for you today. We are interviewing Guru, former co-host of the Dude Grows Show, otherwise known as Sean. He's been fishing. He's been doing all kinds of things, but he also has a ton of grow knowledge to drop on us today. So stay tuned for that. But before we get too far into it, I gotta hit a couple business things. First off, huge shout out to all of our CannaBuzz members. I was just looking at our numbers, and we're at our highest number of members in terms of subscribers ever. So thank you so much for that. We really appreciate your support. Join our community, and if by joining the community, you're helping support the show and helping keeping this whole thing going. So please join us on CannaBuzz.app in your browser, or search CannaBuzz on the App Store and use the code NEWYEAR for 50% off your first month. Your support is really appreciated, and you can join for as cheap as $4.20 a month, but it all goes to helping make this whole thing possible. Second off, we are going to be giving away a pack of TikiMadMan tropical runts. This is Devil Driver times tropical runts. So we're going to be giving that away to a listener right now on this live stream. So once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you missed it, come on to the next live stream and we'll have another pack of seeds to give away. But for everyone on CannaBuzz, we're going to be giving these away at the end of the stream. So make sure to leave something in the chat. And before I go too far, we have a shout out to TikiMadMan. Is that correct? We have a couple news items that we want to share from Tiki. So JR, take it away.
Excellent. Yeah, Tiki is going to be heading to CannaBuzz. He's going to be in booth number 39, and he's there in combination with Mosca Seeds. They've got some breeding project, a collab that they did together. If you show up at the booth and you buy a pack, you get a free 3-pack of seeds as well. They've got all kinds of different variety flavors wise, and it should be a good time. And CannaBuzz, it's a show that I've never been to, one I've always wanted to go to. I think one day we'll get there, buddy. We'll get there. But the event is March 10th through the 12th. And if you want to find more of Tiki's gear, you can look up tikiseeds.com, and I recommend you go to the vault. That's where all the goodies are.
Awesome. So shout out to Tiki. Without his support, we wouldn't have been able to do things like Emerald Cup and things like that. So huge shout out to Tiki. Please give him some support. All right. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a little bit of an intro, so let's get into it. Today is a very, very special day for us here on CannaBuzz and CannaBuzz Sessions. We have the honor of having not only a friend, but a true scholar in the cannabis community. It's Guru, otherwise known as Sean, and he's graduated.
What's up, guys?
He's graduated
Super
from.
excited to be here.
Thanks, man. Thanks, man. I'm not even halfway through your intro yet. JR wrote up a good one. But anyways, quick background on Sean. He's a graduate from Virginia Tech. He moved out west to Colorado, and he worked on the Dude Grows Show for several years. Huge contributor, and really built it up to what it is today. He's recently moved on, and he's been doing all kinds of stuff like fly fishing, catching some beautiful fish, and being out in the great outdoors. So thank you so much, Guru, for joining us today. Great to have you.
Oh, guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's always fun to come hang out with two of my good friends.
Awesome, man. We're super stoked to have you today. So, let's see. So to start off, we like to start off with a little bit of background on people. Tell us a little bit about your cannabis journey. How'd you get started, and where did that passion spark?
I think I was like a lot of kids growing up, that like intelligent person, but I had some ADD or ADHD problems. And it wasn't until I found weed in like 10th grade that I started being able to manage that like really well. So it to me has always been, it wasn't like a party thing to me. It was always medicine, like almost immediately. And I mean, and then it was enough of an influence to when I actually went to school, I wanted to study more into that and like study horticulture and learn much more about growing plants and everything.
That kind of leads us to the next question, and that's about your journey to Virginia Tech. Obviously, you're telling us you had kind of a growing focus in mind. But obviously in Virginia at that time, cannabis wasn't really super cool. So kind
No,
of tell
not
us
cool
how
at
you
all.
tell us what your major in Virginia Tech was and how you kind of were able to focus that towards cannabis and cannabis growth.
So I'm studying environmental horticulture with a focus in sustainable fruit and vegetable production and minored in greenhouse management and entomology. So pretty much all the things you'd want to learn if you were going to go work in a cannabis grow at some point. But at the same time, like Virginia Tech is one of the best ag schools in the country. So like invaluable resource to just be there around a ton of amazing growers of not cannabis, like other things. And there's like so many techniques and just little things picked up from those people. And I got a lot of free pro mix from the greenhouses too.
Oh yeah, good. That's excellent. So as you're there and you're kind of focusing your attention towards growing, were microbes and microbe interactions part of your learning, or was that something you kind of picked up after you had left?
So that is actually something that I incorporated into the horticulture I was doing for school from growing weed in my closet at the time. So I was at the time using Great White Mycorrhizae and their like
Sure.
beneficial micro blend, and we were doing a like hydroponics project with like tilapia and lettuces. And in that, like a big part of it is the nitrogen fixing bacteria that can help turn that ammoniacal nitrogen from the fish pee into available nitrogen for the plants. So having those microbes in there was really important for that. And I recognized that like immediately with the Great White because I was already using it in my garden at home.
Excellent. So we're going to get into some of that nutrient cycling and microbe interaction here in a minute. I think that's great.
So yeah, tell us about kind of the college years. Is that when you started kind of experimenting more in cannabis and especially growing your own, or yeah, what was that like?
There was definitely an upward trajectory, I'd say, on my like growing career, and it happened fairly fast there. Won't get into too many details of that, but it definitely ended with me needing to like walk away from it, and then needed to, or not needed to, but I decided I wanted to move out to Colorado. I'd met Scotty, and he'd flown me out to High Times Cannabis Cup, which was like for a kind of poor kid from Virginia, that's like kind of life changing. So it ended up being completely. But yeah, I mean, formative years as a grower and just kind of I don't know experimenting with life and figuring everything out. But
Yeah. So how old were you when Scotty flew you out? You were like what, 22 or something?
I think I was
Ish?
20, yeah, 21 or 22. I'm pretty sure I was
Yeah.
21. I know
Yeah.
I could
Wow.
drink. I know I got beers while I was out here, so I know I could drink. So I'm pretty sure, yeah, 21.
Yeah. So yeah, flying out to another state that's like totally different in terms of weed.
Wait,
It's gotta be, yeah.
and the first after legalization High Times Cannabis Cup, when it was like
Yeah.
here in all
Popping.
its glory, it
Yeah.
was popping. And like the Dude Grows tent there, we just had pizza boxes full of dabs, and we're giving people dab. Like I have never given dabs to the point that I got dabber's elbow, like from just sitting there continually doing the same thing. But like that's a real thing. um but yeah, I mean, that was just a really cool experience and like solidified that I wanted to move out to Colorado. But at the same time, I'm a big outdoorsman too. So Colorado is like one of the apex like destinations for
Totally.
most of the things I like to do outdoors.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's why it was awesome for me to get you out here to Oregon. I wanted you to kind of see the lay of the land out here in Oregon as well. And
Oh
speaking
yeah.
of that, when you were working on when you were working with Dude Grows and the Dude Grows show, what were like, maybe your top two destinations that you ended up in, and kind of tell us about that a little bit.
Now, are we talking top two that like I would want to go like live there at some point, or top two just like the experience I had while I was
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
Totally.
yeah.
Um, rolling around San Francisco with like Jaron and the crew and going through
Yeah.
like Chinatown and Little Italy and everything and just like rolling joints and smoking them all through San Francisco and Fisherman's Wharf and everything. That was really cool. That was up there. And then our Pacific Northwest trip, where we went and we came and saw JR in Portland. We had the Portland
Throwdown.
Portland
The
Throwdown.
Throwdown.
And then one of the most beautiful places I've been to is Bellingham, Washington, to see Joshua
Mhm.
Rutherford. His
Mhm.
facility and property up there is just like, that was just its own special thing. Driving up there past like Mount Hood, and it was just really cool.
Yeah, it's good up here. I love Oregon.
Yeah, you guys got
But
some
I'm
different
glad- I'm
clouds
funny-
than we got anywhere else.
Oh yeah, cool. It's funny you say that though, because Sam's in San Francisco and I'm in Oregon. So, are you saying that just to be nice to us, buddy?
No, I mean, because the other ones are like Tulsa, Oklahoma, which the lack of like food in Tulsa, Oklahoma was kind of surprising to me. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah.
There was like
Limited.
the one restaurant and then a ton of bars that just don't serve food. So
Yeah, it was very limited.
It's funny. So again, on the Dude Grows front, do you have some kind of favorite memories or moments of working with the dude or Brett, as we also know him?
Oh, 100. The Brett,
The Brett.
the Brett, the dude is just a really funny guy and like loves to have a good time. Wow, I didn't see this question when I did this, a little on the spot, but no, I mean, I've had a ton of great times with Scotty, the dude, JR, like
Yeah.
High C, everyone there.
For sure.
I
So
mean,
you-
and those trips traveling and everything and making some really cool content on those trips.
Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
fun. Doing the kibosh cannabis, like just me as a videographer, like I'm a pretty big photographer and videographer.
Yeah.
Big passion of mine, going and being able to do like those on location in the grow shoots with the gimbal and everything and everyone mic'd up. That was
Yeah.
a ton of fun to do.
Yeah, I imagine. I mean, watching you guys build out the studio over the last couple of years, like once the Patreon started purring and there was some money coming in, so you guys could, get some more resources for equipment and stuff like that. It was really cool to see you guys like just nerd out on the equipment side. I was definitely jealous.
I've set up. I'm already set. I got a studio set up here. I just haven't started making content yet.
Yeah.
I've just been enjoying some time to myself for the last couple months, but got a whole studio here, so like I got the full gambit of gear and I'm getting ready to get started with something new.
Sick.
That's cool. We're excited. We definitely you're definitely going to have to keep us posted on that kind of stuff.
Of course.
So you and Scotty spent a lot of time working together. What are some of the big takeaways you would say you benefited from that relationship?
I learned a lot working with Scott and the people that worked with us at Real Growers and at Dude Grows, and the people that have like come and gone over the years that I've worked with. Like invaluable resources and skill set that I've been able to add to my repertoire. And then, I mean, I really wasn't into photography and videography when I met Scott and the dude. It was something that I kind of a hobby, developed it out of like necessity. Just where like I wanted to make the show better, and to make the show better, I needed to learn how to do these things and get this like new gear and figure out how to work it. And I'm a tech nerd. I'm a lot of kinds of nerd, but I'm a big tech nerd too. So
Right. Totally.
I know Q can relate to that one.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I always like the excuse when you can get work to like buy a new computer, like, buy a microphone or whatever, you know what I mean? So I get it. Well, let's see. So, last kind of note that we'll hit on before we get into like plant nutrients and stuff like that. So you walked away from the Dude Grows show. I imagine that was difficult just to kind of like leave it all behind. Do you have what was that kind of experience like? Or do you have any kind of thoughts where you just like, you decided I've got a new chapter that I'm going to go through and I'm going to follow this new thing for me? And I thought that was really cool. Shout out for that courage.
I mean, yeah, that wasn't the easiest thing to do in the world at all. And I guess it took a lot of people by surprise too.
Yeah.
But no, that wasn't easy to do at all. But I kind of had felt a little stagnant for a while, and like the type of content I wanted to make, we weren't really making. And I also have, like I've said, a huge passion for the outdoors and fly fishing. And I've actually since moved to some way closer to some way better water. And I'm working on being a guide out here too,
That's
and
cool.
helping people experience fly fishing and have a really good time doing it and learn some things at the same time. Hey, and if anyone wants to book a trip and come talk weed the entire time, I got you.
Dude, dude,
That's awesome.
like a
Yeah, no,
great time.
I just yeah, but before we move on to the next one, like, you know, shout out to Sean. You're a dude who's, you know, finding his career, and I thought it was just cool. It's been cool to watch you develop your, you know, creator skill set, so to speak. And so I'm excited to hear that you're, you know, working on something behind the scenes and that you want to do more. And I totally get what you're saying. It's cool that you're gonna go explore different things and make different types of content, and then so I feel like we got the best of both worlds. We're still gonna get the Dude Grows, and now we're gonna get more Guru in a different form. So I'm excited.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
excited too, man.
Really
Um,
excited. I think I'm really glad that, you know, Q said, you were able to just like, you know, come to the point in your life where you realize you're ready for a new chapter. And I think it takes a lot of, you know, a lot of being brave, you know, because
and
sometimes I've been at points in my life where I've wanted to, but been too afraid with a wife and a kid to do it. And so to just be able to say, fuck it, I'm going to do it and make that change in your life, I know has to be tremendously difficult. And I know that, you know, you got to be really brave to do such a thing. And I'm sure you had a good support system in making that decision.
I have an excellent support system, and like thank God for that. But it's super hard. It's just kind of one of those things where like kind of felt like that chapter in my life was like kind of coming to an end, and like you could keep the chapter going a little bit longer, but it was just kind of the right time. I've moved since then, and
Totally.
yeah, just excited to get on to the new chapter
New
and
venture. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
new adventure. And like I'm an autodidact polymath, so like the challenge of like learning a new thing and teaching myself a new thing is like really really rewarding for me.
Totally.
So being able to like go and try something new and not kind of be at a point where like I didn't feel like there was much more I could do. So
Yeah, I hear that. Well,
Me
cool. Well,
too.
yeah. Sorry. Go ahead, Jr.
I feel that way about Discord.
yeah.
Well, cool. Let's go into where let's talk about plant nutrient cycling, right? JR, we're gonna jump into some nutrient stuff. JR wrote up a bunch of great questions for us so that we can benefit from the guru's knowledge here. So, JR, did you want to kick us off with our first question?
Yeah. So the topic I really want to talk about is plant nutrient cycling. A lot of us, you know, kind of, if we have our heads wrapped around it, we're understanding its relationship with soil and plants on Earth. But maybe we could maybe talk a little bit about that in respects to maybe a living soil bed that you have in your indoor grow room. So first of all, can you kind of talk about just what the basics of plant nutrient cycling is?
So it's kind of there's a lot of things that could be plant food that aren't plant available food. Like think like your lawn trimmings, food scraps, ton of stuff like that, or anything that like goes down into the litter or leaf litter above the soil. All of that can be broken down through different either microbial or time interactions or oxidation to break down into a form of food that is actually available to the plant. And it's kind of the whole cycle of how that happens, because it's not just things breaking down. There's bacteria that can convert nitrogen into from the air into plant available nitrogen, but it's the entire kind of how the plants are getting food from the soil that's around it.
So I guess expanding a little bit more on that, why is nutrient cycling important kind of in this whole system, especially important to a grower?
Well, it's like a thing that's happening kind of all the time. And especially if you're top dressing and using cover crops and cutting it down, you're adding stuff to that soil all the time. And it's really important to have a variety of different things there to make sure that the nutrients that the plant could need are there and available for it when it does need them.
Yeah. So what are kind of the differences between fungal and bacterial interactions with the rhizosphere or the roots?
So they happen, I like, obviously it's not like one or the other is happening, and it outcompetes the other one, except for, I mean, some situations that can happen. But most of the time they're kind of covering differing environmental pressures that could happen. Like I always get the pHs flipped on these, and I'm just doing this off the cuff, so forgive me if I get it backwards, but I'm pretty sure usually Bacillus operates at much lower pHs, and then the trichoderma is able to operate at higher pHs, or fungi operate at those higher pHs. And it just makes it so that they kind of break things down in differing ways too. And the way they interact with the roots and everything is different from one another.
So based on that, if you're using an inoculant product that is both fungi and bacteria mixed in one, like in Recharge,
Mhm.
where is your kind of optimal pH range to benefit both the bacteria and the fungi?
So evolution is like a kind of crazy thing, and it's right in the optimal zone for nutrient uptake. Is so if you're in cocoa 5.8, if you're in like a soil or something like that, around 7, 6.8 to 7. So that's the
Oh,
optimal
okay.
zone where both of them are able to operate and be efficacious. There's just, if the soil pH swings one way or the other, one is going to be a little bit more have an advantageous environment for it over the other one.
Cool. So now we kind of want to break up and start kind of discussing the differences between the two. Can you kind of talk about the benefits of mycorrhizal fungi and how its relationship to the roots
So
happen in cycling?
definitely, Mycorrhizae is a really cool fungi that they found. Its main thing that it does, at least to like me in the way that I think about it, it exponentially increases the surface area of the root and the root tip. So everyone know, or not, maybe everyone doesn't know, but a plant is only able to absorb nutrition from the tip of its root, like the growing tip of the root. So the more just like logically, the more of those growing tips that you can have, and the more surface area that they take up, the more nutrient that potential the plant might be able to take up. So mycorrhizae drastically, and you've seen it before when you like transplant a plant that's been fully inoculated with mycorrhizae, it's got all that white fuzz all over it. And that white fuzz is turning one root tip into like hundreds of root tips. So there's just a lot more sites for nutrient interactions to happen in the soil. And it works as that's not even getting into it working as like a communication network between plants.
Yeah.
And that's ectomycorrhizae, not endo. And in weed, it can only use endomycorrhizae. Ectomycorrhizae is like kind of useless. It's just there for gimmicks. But yeah, I mean, it's more like the mycorrhizal networks you'll see in old growth forests are the ectomycorrhizae, or in pine forests.
And they're actually communicating from one plant or one tree to another as to, hey, can I borrow a little bit of this? Or, hey, do you got
Well,
some sugar I could borrow? That kind of thing.
exactly. And it allows those old growth trees to kind of grow the next generation of trees by without having to like grow everything, and then you end up with a ton of like matchstick forests, which is not what you want. The mycorrhizal network will kind of choose which trees growing in the understory that are not getting enough light or nutrition to be able to grow there. The mycorrhizal network will allow it to grow there so that the forest isn't going to die when like the current generation of trees goes away, which is kind of a cool concept that
Yeah.
like it's more intelligent design in forests than people think there is, where it's choosing that tree to be the one to grow because it's in the advantageous position over like the 100 other seedlings that came up from the tree.
Yeah, one of my favorite things that I learned in this realm of stuff was so I live, like JR was saying, live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so there's redwood trees out here, and we went to the Muir Woods, which is on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge, which is there's a redwood forest there. And there were one of the guides was telling the story how albino redwood trees act as basically like almost like a kidney or like a liver for the forest, where the regular redwood trees will give nutrients to the albino because the albino tree can't use chlorophyll to convert nutrients. So they'll give nutrients to the albino tree, and in return, the albino tree will suck up extra like metals and toxins and things like that. So it's really interesting how the forest will work together, and it will make that tree live longer than it normally would have. You know, that tree would have died, but instead it'll be able to live for like 60 years and act as this,
It found
contributor.
it found a niche in the forest that like there was a job that needed filling, and the forest being connected and like through the soil is able to actually do that. Instead of, for the longest time, people thought of forest as like millions of individual organisms there
Yeah.
together, not communicating with each other, not
Mm.
doing anything, just bumping into each other. And
Right.
like it's kind of hard at this point to think that life is like that simple, because it's definitely not. And even like I describe it all the time, your gut microbiome, your guts are your roots. So like the way that soil microbes interact with roots is the same way that your gut microbes interact with your immune system through your vagus nerve and your brain. It can control your mood and all sorts of different things that they're finding out. So like biologicals really are going to be the future in a lot of things, especially medicine, like huge in medicine. And like we see it already, they're using yeast to make THC at this point.
Yeah, I think Paul Stamets just did a big project. He's got a huge amount of funding that he's going to start producing more fungally dominated medicines for our culture, and start utilizing some of the intelligence that designed within that to start. You want to look at what penicillin did for humanity. And that's just, kind of a dumb luck. Imagine if we actually put real science and real effort into bringing some of these fungal products to the market.
Well,
I
and
think
like you bring up penicillin, which is like that's a really interesting topic. So like lab grade penicillin, yes, like that took a while to synthesize and get something that was like that efficacious and strong. People have been putting moldy bread on battlefield wounds for millennia. As in, like, we don't know exactly if they knew what was going on or not, but they did find out that, like, hey, the people that got moldy bread put on their like battlefield amputation or something had a way higher likelihood of surviving than people that didn't. So they may not have known the causation behind it, but they definitely saw the correlation, and it was done in like medieval wars back to like the Roman Empire or the
Right.
Egyptians.
So
Just
Yeah. So speaking of bacteria, then I guess how does bacteria work in this whole system and the nutrient cycling system? How does that kind of play a role?
So bacteria are really good at a lot of different things. They can be really good decomposers. So they can take organic material that's not in a plant available form and break it down, and make it into something that's plant available. But like the big thing for me with bacteria is much more the probiotic aspect of them than the nutrient cycling. There are some ones that are amazing at solubilizing like nitrogen and phosphorus and potassium, and breaking down like rock minerals into like micronutrients. But the big thing for me is bacteria as plant growth promoting rhizobacteria, where they actually interact with the plant's immune system and can trigger like innate responses within the plant for it to be able to defend itself against something that isn't there, just so that it's ready for it. It's like kind of think of you getting sick from something. That's your immune system training itself how to beat that thing. It's the same concept with PGPRs in the soil, where they kind of train the plant to get it ready for any type of attack or environmental pressure, pest pressure that it might have.
Cool. And
that's
Sorry,
Sorry,
JR.
Sam, go
I
ahead.
wanted to throw in a couple questions from the live chat because we got quite a live chat, quite an active live chat today because so many people were stoked that you were joining today, Guru. So I guess I want to shout out everyone on the CannaBuzz community in the live chat. We've gotten a bunch of different questions, so I'll try to find opportunities to throw in some. But one of the things I thought we could touch on real quick too in this discussion is Humics. So we had a question from Hunter Gatherer. He asked, how do humics kind of work into this system? Humic acids, what are they kind of contributing? If you can touch
Uh,
on that real quick.
Humic acids act as a like a catalyst for biological reactions happening in the soil. They make nutrient assimilation for the plant easier. And weirdly, like humic substances, you can trace the fall of empires to the loss of humic materials in their soils. Like the Incas, their whole empire in South America going away. The time that their humic substances were depleted from their soils, their teeth started decaying and their society collapsed like
Wow.
within 100 years, which is kind of crazy. But humics specifically are really good in the soil at helping assimilate nutrients, and they make, like, anytime a nutrient gets uptaken by a plant, that's a chemical reaction happening. And just in chemistry, what catalysts do, they lower the amount of energy you need to put in for a chemical reaction to happen. So when you
Oh,
have
okay.
humics there, it's making those chemical reactions are able to happen a lot quicker and faster and just more readily. And that's why it's able to help get nutrients into the plant just a little bit more efficiently. And then fulvics are like, it gets into huge regulatory weirdness about humic and fulvics. But fulvics are the smaller fraction. So it's like a rhombus in a square. All fulvics are humics, but not all humics are fulvics. The fulvics are smaller. They get into the plant a lot easier. They're much better for like a foliar spray on your plant. That is their best attribution to nutrient assimilation through the leaves. Like if you're doing foliar sprays with food or anything,
Oh,
they're a
okay.
great way to do that. They're also good to have in the soil. The only thing is with humics, the sourcing material that it comes from can be kind of important. There are lower and higher quality sources for humic materials. Again, it just kind of depends on where. Like there's good and bad linerdite, there's good and bad reed sage.
Yeah.
But those are the two main sources for humic and fulvics. But yeah, just personally, I use recharge in my grow, but I'm getting humics from there, and then I'll use like a supplemental fulvic on top of that.
Cool.
So with the bacteria that we were discussing in the cycling, you had mentioned growth promoting as plant growth promoting as part of the function. You also mentioned a little bit nitrogen fixing, and of course with the mammoth products, we're used to phosphorus solubilizing bacteria. Can you kind of touch on each of those and how they interact and how we can apply those to our systems, our nutrient cycling systems?
100%. So just as far as using microbes go, just in general, with just about anything, I am never one that's going to say that more biodiversity is going to be a bad thing in the long run. So having the most biodiverse, and in that, not just being like all native microorganisms, there are some really, really good designer, like functional microbes that have been designed to operate in like horticultural and agronomic systems that aren't normal situations for those microbes, like in nature. So having kind of all of them there available to be able to help break down whatever nutrients you're trying to cycle in the soil is pretty important. And like a consortia can be much of being the like breakdown in proportions of the different microbes that are in your soil. That consortia can be like wildly different based off of environmental parameters. But it's not like any of those species are just going to die off completely. They'll just either go dormant or they're there waiting for the opportunity in the environment for it to be advantageous for them, and then be able to, like if talking about mammoth, if there's rock phosphate there for it to feed on, it's not going to be able to do anything if there's no sources of phosphorus in your soil. Like it's not like it's going to make phosphorus out of the
Yeah,
air.
right.
That's what nitrogen fixing bacteria do. They're able to, through like a beneficial relationship with legumes, the like nodules on legume crops, they're able to fix nitrogen out of the air. So that's non-plant available into, and they're able to make that an ammoniacal nitrogen that is directly plant available to the plant. So they essentially are using the air to create nitrogen, which I mean, that's what they do in factories, but you need a lot less energy and fossil fuels and stuff to be able to make nitrate fertilizers just using bacteria.
And so now, like, I use a product from Extreme Garden called Azos. You're probably familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nitrogen fixing bacteria. And they recommend that you apply it directly to the roots when you're transplanting. Can you talk about the difference between root applications like that versus water in applications?
So it depends on where you're trying to get it. Like with Azos and those nitrogen fixing bacterias, you want those if you're trying to be like efficient with your money and your use of it, you want
Yes,
those
I am.
exactly where you need them. So on the roots where the nodules are going to form for those nitrogen fixing bacteria to attach themselves, that's why you want to dust your roots with those. Getting into like something like Great White or Recharge or one of those, I would not recommend dusting roots with that because there's a lot of other benefits from those products that happen in the soil, not in the root zone. And you want those microbes to be in the soil ready for when a root comes and makes contact with it as well.
And so in a product like Recharge, is there nitrogen fixing bacteria in there?
There's I guess now that I don't work there anymore, I can say it. There's so many bacteria and fungi in there that like we just don't claim on the label. There's no need to. There's no regulatory problem with doing that. But yes, it has actually a really good nitrogen fixing capacity within it. Like I had some really fine-tuned tests done on the microbiology that's in there, and it's surprising that it really is like an instant compost tea. And like I don't work there anymore, right? But I gotta say.
I got two questions. One, we'll get to in a second about the ion exchange in the rhizosphere, but I also got a question from Loki Terps in the live chat. You were just talking about Recharge, and we were talking about Humics and all that kind of stuff. So one of our friends, you mentioned him earlier, Jaron from New Millennium, they have Ruby Fulvic, right? That's their Ruby is their Fulvic. Is there such a thing as like too much Fulvic if I'm using Ruby and Recharge at the same time, or whatever? Am I like overdoing it? And once again, that's a question from Loki Terps. Shout out Loki for the support.
So, is it possible to overdo it with Humic and Fulvics? Yes, it is easier to overdo it with Humics than it is with Fulvics because it's a big enough molecule that it can actually clog root pores if there's like way in excess of it. In using Recharge and Ruby Fulvic by the label rates, no, you're not going to get anywhere close to being able to overdo it with the Humics and the Fulvics.
Cool. So then getting onto the ion exchange in the rhizosphere, what is that? I'll just say it straight up. I think I failed chemistry. So what is the ion exchange? What is that process in the rhizosphere, and why is that important?
So just the simplest way to explain it, I'm going to use table salt as an example. So that's sodium chloride. That is made up of an anion and a cation. So they are positively charged molecules and negatively charged molecules, and they're bonded together. But when you put them in water, they dissolve and they separate from each other, and they're like in that solution. Plants are only able to uptake nutrients in their ionic form. There's just really no way around it. Like at the exchange site on the root tip, an ionic transfer happens. So it is the way that plants are taking it up. So like if you think of, let's use potassium phosphate. as an example, that breaks down in potassium and phosphate. So you have your phosphorus and your potassium. Each of those are nutrients that the plant needs at certain times. And it is able to, through like proton pumps within the root, is able to kind of influence the pH and the charge right around itself to bring in which of those ions it's trying to take in. So that's how plants absorb nutrition. That's the point that through microbial action or through time and oxidation and exposure to sunlight and stuff, things have to break down to become available to a plant. There's also the like kind of hack that we've come up with in the last like 100 years of using salt-based fertilizers. Like I was like potassium phosphate, calcium nitrate, stuff like that, where they are salts that break down immediately into plant available form, so they don't have to go through all that microbial action. Albeit having the like complete relationship with the microorganisms in the soil, breaking down that nutrition and delivering it to the plant, I feel like you get a much more, actually, let me rephrase, it's easier to get a much more full spectrum of nutrition in the plants. Like I trained horticulturalist, you can grow, it's all about bricks. You can grow high bricks plants in salt-based nutrients. You just have to be on top of everything because you're controlling everything. In a living soil, you just kind of have to like put everything that it might need in there at the start and like let that microbial action and time happen to make those things plant available to the plant. And you get, especially for a beginner grower, you get an easier way to get higher bricks and more full spectrum nutrition to the plant. Not saying you can't do that with any salt-based nutrient line. It's 100% possible. It's just going to be a little bit harder, in my opinion.
And a quick question I have on that. We've been getting a bunch of great questions via chat, so I'm going to try to throw some in towards the end of our questions on the nutrients and everything. But one quick one that I had selfishly was about kind of moisture content, and because it's water, obviously the soil having enough water in it basically to facilitate all this seems to be pretty crucial, right? So I'd be curious 100%. What your thoughts are on, we had a question from Bud Wellington about moisture meters and if that's important, but it also made me think about recent discussions around crop steering and drybacks, because I'm a Blue Mott's user. I really love Blue Mott's, but it seems like there's also been this discussion lately, like on the Build a Soil channel, Jeremy I think brought it up, where is it good to have that a little bit of dry back? Does that help the plant? I know I just threw a lot at you, but I'd love to hear 100%. Your thoughts on it.
So I'll start with the soil moisture meters.
Yeah.
Amazing tools to use if you get a good one. So like the cheap $30 one you just stick in and it says wet or dry on it, like that's not the answer.
Yeah.
The ones that can actually give you relative moisture for the substrate that you're in can be like invaluable tools, especially if you're trying to crop steer, because that lets you know like to the millimeter how much water, or milliliter, sorry, how much water your plant is drinking for a given amount of time. So drybacks are pretty important in crop steering. It just having optimal soil moisture all the time actually isn't the best thing for it. Letting it dry back and then getting that extra irrigation instead of constantly getting irrigated, you can start to control the plant a little bit more. So like the more shorter irrigation cycles you give them with less water in each one, but more of them, that steers more towards like vegetative growth. But giving like 3 waterings that are much bigger than the 9 you gave in veg throughout the course of the day, and knowing that I have a certain dryback point I want to get to over the course of the night too, when it's not getting irrigated at all because photosynthesis isn't happening. Crop steering is something that like in the last full grow that I did and like did for the show, documented, it is a really, really, really valuable tool. I will say that in like living soil beds, it's a lot harder to do.
Yeah.
As far as the irrigation that you're doing for everything, because you're not just taking care of the cannabis plant, you're taking care of your cover cropping and the the nutrient cycling capacity of the soil. It has to be wet up to the top and mulched to get everything in there. So a little bit harder to do it in that. But even just having, the more data you have on anything, the better future decisions you can make, like in your decision-making process. So having the data, even if you're not utilizing it for crop steering or anything, in a living soil bed is just really valuable information to me.
Very cool.
And that's just because you're not crop steering with the EC of your nutrient solution that you're watering the plant, and doing your measured drybacks, doesn't mean that you can't do all of the crop steering that we all pretty much do anyways with your environmental parameters, the amount of light the plant is getting. Like all of these are steerable environmental factors that you can play around with. And even just in the living soil bed, seeing if a 10% dryback or 20% dryback on the bed has any benefits to it. I'm not a living soil grower. I mean, I do it outside for like my veggies and everything, but indoors I pretty much grow in cocoa, just have a little bit more control with that.
Right.
And so cool. Would you say that if you're a salt or salt grower in cocoa, which is basically hydroponic, would you say that the relationships with your drybacks are obviously different than the relationships with your drybacks if you are in a living soil bed where you are trying to promote multiple forms of life giving?
Oh, definitely. And the benefits of crop steering for like irrigation and electrical conductivity and stuff, they get less and less the bigger container that you're in. So like the easiest to steer container is the smaller the container, the easier it is to steer because it dries back quicker. In a big bed, it's a little bit harder to do those different steering techniques. So yeah, it would definitely, I would pay attention to it much more if you're like a soilless media grower as opposed to like a living soil grower.
Cool. So now can you kind of talk about how Mycorrhizae itself facilitates these ionic exchanges?
So it is actually able to move ions and cations throughout itself like miles, which is crazy. In the ectomycorrhizae. Endomycorrhizae, like I said, it's just increasing that ion exchange because it's increasing the surface area of the root tip, and giving more sites to potentially get an ion or cation into the plant.
We had a quick question too because we started using the term crop steering, and I'll throw it out there too. All of a sudden, it just seemed like in the last 6 months, everyone was using this phrase crop steering, and before that, I never heard it before. So what is crop steering? I gather that it's like, manipulating the plant to what you want, basically. But yeah, curious if you could expand on that a little bit.
So I love explaining this to people because it's cool to tell them that you crop steer already. If you control your environment and you change your like VPD through your Pulse app or through your either Pulse app or like AC Infinity app, and you change that when you go from veg to flower, or throughout it, like you're crop steering. You're using environmental parameters to help get the plant to do what you want it to do. If you use like a metal halide or more blue, like 5,000 or 5,500 Kelvin LEDs in veg, and then you use 3,000 Kelvin LEDs in flower, and you turn them up higher, you're crop steering. Like all of those it's just controlling your different environmental parameters, your irrigation parameters, just to get the more desired outcome from the plant than you want. Because there's plants are you kind of can think of it, you can get them to grow vegetatively, and like don't think about this in terms of light cycles, just in terms of the like plant morphology, how it's growing. You can get a plant to grow more vegetatively through crop steering techniques in flower. So like say you just stripped the living shit out of the plant, every fan leaf off of it, and topped it and bent it over. After that, switch to a generative steer or a vegetative steer on the plant. so that it is more able to grow more leafy growth. And then like realistically, there's lots of different philosophies on crop steering for cannabis. Some people go with like a 4-week vegetative through the first bit of stretch, switch to a generative after stretch is done and go. Some people will run vegetative steering until like week 6 and then switch to generative steering for the last 2 weeks. That's actually what I tried the last grow that I did. So like all these different things, it's just paying attention to your parameters and then knowing kind of which way to get it to swing more generative flowering growth or vegetative growth. So it's pretty cool, like knowing that I can strip a plant super heavy, and like people called me out for it and then they were like, ate their words a little bit later on, but like strip it super heavy. But for the 3 days before that, I was steering it super vegetatively, so it was able to handle that stress. And then for the week after that, I was steering it super vegetatively, so it was able to rebound from it really quickly, where it wouldn't have been able to do it near as quickly if I was steering it like towards more flowering or generative growth.
Right.
So yeah, crop steering is an amazing tool, and it did kind of come online that someone coined that term. But like, don't get me wrong, we've all been crop steering for like our entire cannabis growing careers. We just weren't as intentional about it as we know to be now.
Very cool.
So we kind of want to start kind of switching from the ion exchanges to more of the enzymatic interactions with the roots. What are some of the roles that enzymes play in root interactions and the deliverance of nutrients and nutrient cycling?
So enzymes are like hugely important. We talked about catalysts earlier, where they lower that energy of activation or the amount of energy you got to put in for a chemical reaction to happen. Catalysts are the same, or enzymes are kind of the same thing, like the humics and fulvics, where they make those chemical reactions just easier to happen and take place. Let me see, I think you named a couple of them on here. So like phospholase, that one, that is what microbes like the microbes in mammoth P, you can think of microbes like little enzyme factories. It's what they do. It's how they operate in this world. They make enzymes to make food for themselves or make food for the beneficial relationship they have with the plant. So like those microbes in mammoth P will make that enzyme. It's the thing that is actually able to break down like that rock phosphate or that inavailable phosphorus and make it plant available. Like it's the chemical that the microbes are making to break that down.
And so the enzymes themselves are not actually delivering to the root zone ionically. They're making stuff ready, available to be delivered, or am I wrong about that?
So like kind of yes and no.
All right.
Think about an enzyme like flubber. And you could like stick something to the outside of flubber and it would stay there, but it's still like attached to flubber. You know what I'm saying? That's like an ion attaching itself to an enzyme. So the enzyme's going to like move over to the root tip, the ion's attached to it, and it hands it off like at the root. So enzymes aren't alive, but they're like organic things made by living materials. Or by living things. And but yeah, it's used to do that. Like plants, a lot of people don't realize this. Plants make enzymes within themselves too, to get like biochemical reactions to happen. So like when nitrogen needs to be mobile within the plant has to make nitrogenase, which is the enzyme that grabs nitrogen and then can move it throughout the plant to where it needs to go. But nitrogenase, if you don't have molybdenum, which is a like micronutrient for plants, it is necessary for the formation of nitrogenase. So if you don't have that, you can't make the nitrogenase. Nitrogen can't be mobile. And it's just these like complex biological interactions that are going on within the plant.
Okay, and now you had once, and I'm going to call you out on this one from years ago. You had once said that you didn't feel like we could feed the world population without having some sort of salt fertilization. Can you kind of talk about your stance on that a little bit, or has it changed? And how has nutrient cycling been improved in agricultural systems over the years?
So the main reason I said that statement, and I stand by that statement too. I'm just gonna throw that out
Here
there.
come the downvotes.
Well, no, do I think that growing things in like the organic and focusing on nutrient cycling and everything are super important and the best food that you can get? 100% agree with that statement. Everybody doesn't eat the best food. There's so much farmland in the world that is not arable farmland without commercial industrial agriculture. Like there's no water there. They have to canal it to it. And then the soil is like devoid of any nutrients or organic material. So the only thing you can do is use salt nutrients to grow there. A huge portion of China, like of their farmland is like that. Pretty much most of the farmland in the world that isn't the Great Plains of America or California is like that. So those places that are making tons of food now are like would not be able to do that without commercialized industrial agriculture. Like it's just not possible. Right. Do I wish that were different? Or if there were like a seventh of the amount of people in the world, yeah, we can make enough food for everyone using like natural systems to do so and not do industrial agriculture. But I just, with the amount of people, without the way the green revolution went for everything, it just wouldn't be possible to feed everybody.
Yeah, and for all of our viewers and listeners, it's all about nuance in this conversation. And so, it's funny, we had our friend Farmer Freeman on the show a couple months ago or so, and we were talking about GMO crops and stuff like that. And he had a kind of similar-ish point, and just in terms of like, there's some elements to this where there's good. You need to create certain types of plants to survive in certain situations or whatever it is. And I think there's kind of nuance to all this. And just like with industrial farming, there's, I think we had a question about this actually, which is about responsibility, right? You don't want to, we're not talking about flooding your field with a shit ton of nitrogen and to the point where it goes into the water table, right? There's some amount of responsibility that has to be here as well.
And just in my opinion, some of the best like food farmers in the world, they don't grow purely organic. They do the responsible parts of both systems and use them to their advantage to have the healthiest, best plants they can. So it's all about nuance when it comes to this, that like, there's a lot of bads, like the organic produce that you get at the grocery store. There's a lot of bad stuff that's like registered for organic use that gets used on all of that stuff. So like, I'm a big proponent of knowing the grower of your food or of your cannabis, and knowing like their ethos on things. So like joining a local CSA for food, where like you can go tour their farm and see how they do everything and see that they don't crop dust or like spray growth promoters on their apples or anything like that. But to me, I can go to someone's farm and they don't have to do everything organic for it to be cool with me. It's just them doing things responsibly, ecologically, and for like the health of the people that are going to eat their food or smoke their weed.
Yeah, and I just seen an article or a clip about the importing of organic foods from other countries. They don't have the same regulatory things that we do here in the States for our definition, whatever that may be.
I was going to say the amount that you trust
produce.
Imported organic produce is the amount that you trust the regulatory bodies and the government from the country that it came from. So like if we're talking about banana republics shipping bananas to the United States, don't buy the organic ones. It's just a ripoff. They're not organic to begin with. Especially if it's like Chiquita banana or one of the like major producers. I just don't. They'll try and skirt every regulation they possibly can can to be able to put that on the label because they know they can sell it for twice as much.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was shout out to Jeremy from Build a Soil, and I think I've seen Soil King have similar conversations where, things like OMRI certifications and whatnot may not mean a whole may not mean a whole lot, and it's important to pay attention to where these things come from, where they're sourced, right? If your blood meal is coming from a nasty source, it's not gonna be, it might be organic because it's blood meal or whatever, but the source it came from is not organic. All right.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's why I'm huge, big proponent of just know your grower,
Right.
regardless of what the crop that they're growing is. Know your grower.
Totally. Well, we've got last few questions before we finish off our session with you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. We're gonna
Oh, of
go.
course, guys.
We might go a little bit long, but I appreciate everyone hanging out with the chat. We've been going on for an hour, and shout out once again everyone in our live chat. But let's like I said, finish off on a couple more beats about nutrient cycling, and actually maybe we can talk about a couple of things here into one. So how can nutrient cycling be improved in agricultural systems? And also on the agricultural side, how can we be more responsible here in terms of agriculture and make sure that we're not doing things like polluting our streams and impacting our fishermen and our fish?
Uh, so there are like a number of ways we could be better about nutrient cycling. Not leaving land fallow. And I guess I'm talking like grand scale agriculture still. Not leaving land fallow, using cover cropping materials to prevent soil erosion. So that the soil that you've spent so much time building actually gets to stay there and doesn't just blow away. Increasing the just funding for research and microbial research on different microorganisms, because we've barely scratched the surface of what's there. We just have some that we found, but like they find new antibiotics all the time in dirt. Like the most recent one they found that was good for pan-resistant staphylococcus. They found in some dude's garden in his backyard in the UK. So like
Yeah.
it's yeah, the research needs to be done, and like real deal scientists doing this and finding these functional microorganisms and kind of like bringing them to market and stuff. I think just people can be better in realizing that you can utilize your front and backyard to grow your own food and grow your own medicine, and don't just grow a monoculture of grasses on your front yard.
Yes.
The
Right.
largest amount of arable farmland in the world is the American homeowner's front and backyard. So like, and it's underutilized. We grow monoculture fucking Kentucky bluegrass on it. So like, maybe don't do that and grow some more food. And that kind of makes that whole food supply system less susceptible. And I mean, it's just better for everyone. And buy more stuff local too.
Yeah, we always say support your local grower.
Yeah, for sure. And I was gonna say all it takes is one person on the block to get the party started. I started growing vegetables in my front yard and kind of made raised beds in my front yard. And now my neighbor directly across the street's doing it too. And so I feel like you just gotta dip your toe, get it going.
My big problem where I've moved to, I'm kind of like in the country, and we've seen like hundreds of deer since we've lived here, whole herds of pronghorn deer, mountain lion, coyotes. So and more bunnies than I've ever seen in my life. So I'm gonna have to come up with some systems to mitigate those pressures.
Those pest
Well,
pressures.
with your guru, with your sharp shooting and your good access to water, and sounds like a lot of protein running around, you should be good to go.
Should be all good to go.
Well, I know like I said, we're going a little long today, so let us know if you need to jet. But let's talk real quick about fishing. We know you've been out there fishing. So what have you been up to? How did you get into fly fishing?
Here, sorry, give me just 1 second.
No
We're
worries.
just going long. I just got to shoot it one text and then I'm good.
We get it. We get it. So shout out to everyone on the live stream. We've got L Funk, Loki Terps, Psych Doctor, White Socks, Crazy Pop Mom, Infusions by Design, and many, many more have all been in the live chat today. We also want to give a shout out, like I said, we said at the top of the show, TikiMadMan. He hooked up my man JR with some TikiMadMan seeds, and we're giving those away every week. We're going to be giving them away at the end of the show today for our live viewers. So yeah, Sean, on the fly fishing front, how'd you get started in fly fishing?
So I've been an avid fisherman, like my whole life. So like all through high school, as soon as me and my friends could drive, that's what we did after school. Was I grew up on the tailwater of the Clayton Lake Dam on the New River, which is an awesome like muskie and bass fishery. But as a graduation present from high school, my uncle got me my first fly fishing rod. And I mean, kind of started there fishing for bass on the New with poppers and never looked back. It was one of the like deciding things that motivated me to not just the weed, but the fishing in Colorado was another big thing that influenced me to be like, you know what, I'm gonna move here. And it's something that like I've talked about it on the show. I've done pretty much the entire time I've lived out here. In my free time, I was going fishing all the time. And I guess there was a 2-year hiatus from that. I rescued a kid from drowning in the river, and then also another kid passed away in that same incident. So like took a little break from that, but like gotten way back into the swing of it. And yeah, it's like one of my big passions in life. And it also kind of explains the entomology, like tack on the degree. That is useful in plants 100%, but it's also very useful in fly fishing, where you're trying to imitate bugs and match bugs and identify what's in the water and on the water and targeting those bug species to the fish. So
cool. Well,
And
and
I'm sure that changes as the season progresses,
oh
based on what.
yeah, there's lots of different hatches. Like the Arkansas River that I live on now is famous for its mayfly hatch, like Mother's Day mayfly hatch. Right now it's all wintertime, so the fish are in like deep, slow water, and you can just run a nymph by them and hope they bite. Like any January or February fish is like, thank you, fishing gods. But in like the next couple weeks, the mayflies start to move, or not the mayflies. Yeah, actually, yeah, mayflies start to move, and the blue wing olives start to move, and those hatches start to happen, and then that moves all the fish out of the deep winter water, and like game on.
cool.
Nice.
So, JR, we'll whittle down some of our questions since we want to make sure we get Guru out of here soon. But I did have a question for you, Sean, before you run. Where can people find you in terms of fly fishing? How can they hook you? You mentioned earlier, like hit you up if they want to go on a trip. A bunch of people in chat are like, dude, how do I find Guru?
So currently I am not with an outfitter right now. I'm actually like putting in job resumes, which is something I haven't done in a really long time, for guiding positions with fly shops. So as soon as I have something, I'll let you guys know. Currently I can't take anyone out other than I can just go fishing with you, but I can't like do it professionally or anything.
Fair enough.
Just working on getting with a shop and an outfitter to be able to operate with. But yeah, super exciting.
So if people wanted to hit you up, then or if you're inviting that, how should they do that?
So my Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me. It's at Sean Crayer, SEAN-KRAYER. And I'm sure you can throw it in the description or somewhere. But yeah, just check me out there. Shoot me a DM. I'm responsive to pretty much all of them, unless you're just being a dick. So
yeah, right. Okay, so one last fishing and question. Can you kind of discuss the importance of responsible cannabis use while enjoying the outdoor activities, and some best practices for fishermen when treating the environment with respect?
Most definitely. So big one for me, and just in Colorado, and I know Oregon can be the same way, and California too. Wildfires are a big thing around here, and fire danger is the last couple of years at least always been high. Um, I use a pin when I'm out on the water. It makes it way easier, more accessible, and don't have to worry about keeping a lighter dry or anything like that. But having a pin on the water, it makes it so you're not ashing anywhere. There's very little fire danger. You don't have an open flame anywhere. And the pins that they've got today, they taste great. So, and have like full spectrum rosin in them, and the whole shebang. So, but yeah, I definitely a big proponent of using a pin, or like when we go camping, we take the Puffco with us. Um, just so that again, there's no flame or torch or just anything going on where a fire could start. Because last thing I would ever want to do would be the person that starts a forest fire.
Yeah, I myself have been diving back into vape carts because I started working in a corporate office again, and I don't want to light up a joint outside and then smell like weed. So, last question for you then:
Uh-huh.
when you're getting carts, what do you get? Because like they always try to convince you to buy distillate or whatever bullshit because it's like the cheap stuff, and there's so many different options. So when people are getting vape carts, what should they look for?
So in Colorado specifically, we are blessed to have a very mature recreational cannabis market. Um, the rosin cartridges are pretty much the only ones I go for. And like I don't just smoke a cart like it's like if I'm in the outdoors or I'm on the water, that's what the cart's for. If I'm at
Yeah,
home,
yeah,
I'm taking a dab or smoking a
sure.
bong or something. Um, but yeah, like full spectrum live rosin carts, and from like there's a couple of brands that at this point I 100% trust their quality, and like I know it's going to be good when I get one, and it's not going to be like a broken atomizer or anything like that. So yeah, like Dablogic, Laser Cat, 710 Labs, Soy Cubano, Oleo. Like those are the Colorado brands. And I know there's some crossover um in
Sure.
California with like Dablogic and Verity Natural and 710 Labs. You can get those in both places. But yeah, the rosin carts are the way to go, in my opinion. They hit you like flower hits you, just like a rosin dab does, where like
Okay.
it's much more full spectrum. Um, you're getting more of the plant, not just stripped whatever hydrocarbon was most advantageous to strip that cannabinoid off. You're getting everything. And like
Cool.
that's what I'm after when I'm smoking these days.
Yeah, I thought it kind of changed the cart game for me. I was really anti-cart for a very long time. But then I had a travel situation come up, and so I grabbed one of the live rosin carts. I thought it was tasty. I thought it did the job very well. Wasn't as fleeting as the other carts were, where you would
Yeah.
hit it and then 5 minutes later you like, need to hit it again. It was very more. It was very more sustaining. So yeah, I definitely can agree with that.
Yep.
100%.
Well,
Yeah, definitely. And if you're traveling, it's the way to go too. Just
totally.
they're super easy.
Well, JR, do you have any last words that you want to share with Sean
And I
before
was
we
gonna say,
ask
if you
him?
guys got any extra chat questions you want to throw my way,
Okay.
I got a couple. I got a couple minutes.
I
I'm not in
do.
Okay.
any
I
rush.
do have one thing I want to ask you about, Guru, and that was I think Mr. Groa had Tad Hussey on this week,
Uh
and
huh.
Tad had mentioned the fact that there's some studies out that are showing that lower salt levels in a living system actually can promote microbial growth and their prosperity. Do you have any insight on that at all?
So in my opinion, some of the best nutritionally like full medicine that you can get or food that you can get comes from combining both systems where you get the best of both worlds. And yes, using salts in really low concentrations to where they're there and available, but it's not any that's using them responsibly and like the way that they should be used, not just feeding everything and all that and not having good soil. It's kind of like the start of the green revolution, where like the first time someone used like nitrogen fertilizers on their corn in their good soil that they've been cultivating for years, it was amazing. And then they had to use more and more and more and more every year. But if they had just kept up their like nutrient cycling and their management of their soil and their soil health, and use those in much smaller amounts, they probably could have had really good yields for a really long time and have a less susceptible system to like crop damages of a ton of different kinds.
And we had a question from I was remembering we had a question from Mac Buds in our live chat. Once again, the CannaBuzz community is watching live right now, so shout out to you all. Mac was asking about basically about using synthetic nutrients in soil. Does it hurt your mycorrhizae and all the stuff that we've been talking about when you use synthetics? And then also, do synthetics hurt my worms if I've got worms in my pots or whatever it is?
So it all it's kind of depends on the concentration of things. Worms do not like salty soil to start off with. They can live in it, but they would probably rather not, and it's not the best environment for them. If they get like 20 or 30 parts per million of like any of the nutrients, no, it's not going to be an issue or anything like that at all. It's when they're hit with a ton of salt that like, yeah, you can start to kill some stuff off fairly quickly in those really high salinity environments, unless you're using microorganisms that like I touched on earlier, where they've been bred and selected to operate in those hydroponic or agronomic systems or horticultural systems that you're doing, where like one of the things that they've kind of bred those to be able to survive in and thrive in is high salinity environments. So like, yes, some of your native it's like how they find them. Some of your native microorganisms will just die off from the excess salt. Some of them will be like kind of okay with it. And then like a very few of them will be like rip roaring ready to go in it. And then like those are like Mammoth Peak, where they pick that one, or the microbes that are in recharge, where they pick, but where we pick those, where they function in those systems too. They can still function in the other systems, but they function in that one too. So having a good mix of like targeted microorganisms and then native microorganisms, you kind of cover all your bases and have just in my opinion, a more complete consortia of those microorganisms, and it'll be more functional that way.
And now you mentioned breeding and selecting microbes for, I think Colin said efficacy and function. Can you kind of talk about that maybe in the future of agricultural farming?
What is as far as like finding those microorganisms just to start off with, and then breeding it to better be able to operate in the environments that we want it to, kind of?
Yeah, I thought it was strange that it seemed like the Mammoth P product could have actually been introduced into all of agricultural, not just cannabis, because of the function of what the breeding and selecting of the microbe had accomplished.
So I think that gets into more like business decisions than
Really?
than where it would be
Right.
functional and useful. Um to the cannabis industry, just generally people can sell stuff for higher prices than the agricultural industry, and they're a lot easier early adopters of stuff than the agricultural industry, where someone's been growing corn the way his daddy and his daddy's daddy has been growing corn. So they're a lot harder to get to change the way they're doing things, and it costs a lot more for them to change the way they're doing things. Where like your hobbyist cannabis growers, or even in like a commercial facility, they are a little bit more willing to spend more on the thing they're going. So I think that's what
Right.
Mammoth was probably doing. It was, I mean, it was a it was and is a business. So like they were trying
Yeah.
to make the most money they could out of it, and like respect. But
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It's one of the markets it's probably one of the items that sells the most per pound. You know what I mean? So you have more margin to play around with, kind of buying
exactly.
expensive bacteria that, do a specific function.
Yep.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Guru, for hanging out with us today. It's been a
Of
really
course.
great show. You've been receiving so many different compliments in the live chat. So shout out to everyone in the CannaBuzz community once again for helping make this happen. We'd love to see you in the CannaBuzz community. If you're watching this on YouTube or listening in your favorite podcast app, join us over on CannaBuzz and you could join us in a future live chat. So Sean, do you have any more shout outs? Again, we'll hit your Instagram handle again so people can check you out. But yeah, how should people keep in touch and look for you in the future?
Keep an eye out on YouTube. I will be making a YouTube channel at some point. I've just been had a lot of other life things going on currently, so figuring those all out, and then I will get to it and start doing a YouTube for you guys too. But yeah, just my Instagram. I'll announce everything there, and that'll probably be the best way to just keep in touch and keep up to date on what's going on with Guru.
Sweet. Well, Sean, thank you so much today. We had a great time. JR,
Thank
shout
you.
out to your friend TikiMadMan for supporting the show. We got to go send everyone over to tikiseeds.com to get yourself some genetics. And right after this recording ends, we're going to be giving away this pack of seeds to someone who is in the live chat today. But Sean, huge growers love to you for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate
Growers
it.
love. Yeah, definitely appreciate you guys too, and appreciate everyone and all the DGC hanging out in the chat and watching this. Like, shout out to all you guys. Oh, and the GGWP Xbox party, no RM. Yeah, my homies. Got a shout out to them.
Hey, bro, I just started learning the PS5 platform, so maybe you'll have to give me some tips and tricks on how to make fools suffer.
Okay, I can do that. Honestly, though, I've just been playing Valheim, and it's a Viking game where you just like it's like Minecraft but with better graphics, and you're a
Oh,
Viking.
cool.
So I've been playing that.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with us today, everyone out there. Thanks, Sean. We hope you all have a good one. And once again, support your local grower, right, JR?
That's
And
right.
our sign off is
Growers love.
growers love
Growers
everyone.
love.
Peace.